Hey, hello, welcome. So I've just released a track that I was really pleased with, and I used a lot of different techniques that I thought were cool and might be useful for people to know how I did it. So I thought I would do a track dissection and just go through everything and show you how I did some stuff and just use it as an excuse to show off some techniques. And yeah, let's look at bass. It's coming from the neutron. What I've got going on here is I've got one oscillator on a square, the LFO, which is key synced to modulate the frequency. I got a bit of resonance on there, no envelope, and I've got some stuff patched in over here. I've got the pulse width thing where one oscillator has inverted pulse width modulation. This is straight out of the manual. I'm not really using a lot of it though. It's on attenuator 1 there, so it's hardly any. And then I've got the assign output going into the LFO rate input there, and I've got the assign output set to mod wheel. There's a bit of portamento as well. So what we've got, straightforward so far. So things that I can mess with on this patch: resonance. There is a bit of drive, so the resonance sounds kind of cool if you turn that up. The mod depth, I can mess with the LFO shape. Get quite a lot of different sounds there, and I can also change the oscillator mix, because oscillator 1 is on a sawtooth and is an octave up, and then it's also tuned up. And I basically just mess with all of those things. I replaced these knobs because if you ever try to change the oscillator mix, these are really sensitive and you would just accidentally touch them because they were much bigger. So I replaced them with small ones. So yeah, the bass patch is pretty straightforward. I have the mod wheel enabled on here, and with that I can change the LFO rate. So when you combine that with the way the Digitact sequencer works, I've got this bit. These yellow steps don't actually have any note data assigned to them, but what they do is they change the mod wheel amount. So it changes the speed of the LFO. Oh, and these ones, there is a note, so this re-triggers the LFO each time because the LFO is set to key sync. The other thing that I've got going, that you can hear on this pattern actually, is I have an LFO set up. It's set to I forget what they call this, ramp LFO. It's set to trigger mode. It's going to pitch bend, and it's going down, I don't know, some amount, 90 something. I have the neutron set so that pitch bend down can go a full octave. I have LFO triggering off, but then I have it locked for that first trigger to be on. So that means the first trigger sets that envelope off and it sets the pitch going down. So all of that stuff combined means you can do some kind of cool wobbly bass just with some kind of clever sequencing on here and setting up the patch the right way on here. So that's the bass. So next, I guess I'll look at this lead that I did on the 2600. I did a kind of FM sync lead. Now, something that I realized after I did the recording, and I decided I wasn't going to redo it because I thought that was a really good take, is there's too much reverb on here, because I have reverb from the 2600 itself, those two green ones, and also on the mixer. I've got mixer reverb on as well, so actually I maybe would have done less mixer reverb, I think. I mean, there's still quite a lot of reverb. Okay, so what's going on here is I've got two oscillators in the mixer. It's oscillator 2 and 3, so 2 and 3. A lot of this isn't actually needed. I think it was an old patch that I'd started messing with, and then I've left some of it in place. So we've got, from both of them, we've got the square output or the pulse output. Both of these oscillators are set to sync, so they sync to, I believe, both sync to oscillator 1. I might be wrong on that. I maybe should have looked that up, but I'm not going to. Oscillator 1 saw out is also going to one of the pitch mod sources for oscillator 2. It's getting PWM from the LFO. And then oscillator 3 is just, I'm using some of the normal connections. So we've got VCO2 as one of the pitch mod sources, the ADSR envelope, and then the ADSR is also controlling the pulse width. So what that means is we've got two different just sync oscillators that sound kind of similar but a little bit different. Things that I mess around with to change the sound, changing the ADSR amount go into this oscillator. Changing the ADSR decay time. Changing how much of oscillator 1 is modulating the frequency. And I do this for both of these oscillators. It sounds kind of tame at the minute because I also have the ADSR envelope is modulating the filter cutoff. And this is the amount. Oh, the other thing I've got going on in this patch that I just remembered is the VCA output is going down here to the preamp input, and then the output of that is going to the mixer over here. So I'm using the preamp as a distortion, which is why the mixer is turned right down, because it adds a whole load of gain. I've got quite a lot of resonance on the filter as well, so... The LFO go into this one in case I don't think I actually used that in the track, but I had it set up in case I wanted it. And so I kind of considered this like the main lead of the track, so I was trying to do a lot of changes on this to kind of make this interesting. The Hydrasynth I was using just for a relatively basic pad. It's a pad that I made months ago that I just... I mean, it's quite nice. This thing is just amazing. Especially for like pads and strings, it just sounds awesome. But so there isn't really much to say about this. I've not even pre-planned this to see how I made this sound. We've got oscillator 1 on a saw, oscillator 2 on a saw, 3 on a triangle. So we've got 2 saws, an octave apart. So that one's an octave up. I'm going to guess that we've got, pulse width modulation, which is, with an LFO modulating the pulse width, and then I assume we've got a wave stat, which kind of simulates like a unison kind of sound. So it's basically like a super saw strings, essentially. Nothing world shattering here, just a big bucket of delay on it. I've got macros, I only set up 2. Oh, there I am, look. There I am. Woo! I only set up 2 macros. I've got cutoff. I mean, we know what cutoff does, right? And the other one I've got is it has a compressor as the post effects, set to BPM duck. It's getting its BPM from the Digitact, and I've got it set so that I can just press this button to turn the ducking on. And I do that in the kind of dance breakdown bit. I do that, and that's this. I don't really use this much in this track, which is not a comment on this as a synth. This is an amazing piece of kit. I just didn't need it a lot. Let's talk about drums. I cannot tell you how proud I am of this. Channel 8, I've just got a crash, doing what crashes do. It's a 909 crash. Oh look, it's a hi-hat. That might even be a 909 hi-hat. No, it's an 808 hi-hat, okay. Kick and a snare. I didn't even do any fancy programming on the kick or the snare. That's just a solid pattern. There's no randomness, there's no fancy trigger conditions or anything on this. That's just that. And then this guy. What we have is a whole load of loops. Like there's like 20 or maybe even 30 breakbeat loops that I got out of some free sample pack. If you're going to ask me where to get them from, honestly, I don't remember. But they're all the same BPM. And so I've pulled them all into the sample RAM. And then I set up a pattern where some of them are parameter locked so that they start at 15. Because this is it goes to 120, like, so the end is always 120 from 0 to 120. So you can figure out if you've got a pre-cut loop, you can just do some maths and figure out where the drum hits are. So 15 is going to be the first snare normally. Some of these start from the start of the loop, some of them start from the first snare of the loop, and I just put together a pattern using one breakbeat. So the next thing I did is I got this LFO set up as random, and it's also set to, what the hell is this called? The one where it holds the value on each step. So for each step has a random value between 14.5 and minus 14.5. It's parameter locked to the sample slot. So what that means is every time this trigger hits, it's going to play a different sample from the sample RAM that is within 14. So we're looking at this list. If we go up like 14 and also down 14, any of those samples it could play when that step hits. So if we just do this. So it's a different loop each time. Also, I've got another random LFO set to the delay amount. So each step has a different amount of delay applied to it. Then over in delay, I've got the time right down, the feedback kind of up, and just a little bit of filtering. So that's why we get this kind of weirdness. So you put it all together. Other stuff I've got going on, I've just taken out some of the low end, just absolute maximum overdrive and some reverb. You put it all together. And I use some variation of that in most of these patterns. So that is the drums. Note rewind is another thing about the drums. Just something I've tried to start doing just as a matter of course is always adding some kind of fill, because you've got the fill functionality where you can set some steps to only trigger when it's a fill. It's a fill when you're holding down the fill button. So this is in the last bar. I try to just put fills now on every pattern, even if I'm not necessarily planning to use it, because it means that when I'm performing the track, if I decide that some kind of fill is needed, I can just hit the button and know there's one there. There's been a few tracks that I've posted, a few of the videos I posted that when I listen back to it, I think, I wish that bit I'd done a fill. Okay, vocal sample. This is one that I'm not necessarily super happy with. I was a little bit pushed for time and I just had to pick a sample, so I just took one from a sample pack. But then I tried to just do some kind of vaguely interesting stuff with it. I've now got to remember what track it's on. Okay, so this is the first thing I did. So with this, it's just pitched up a bit. It's got a load of bit reduction on. I've just edited the length to get just the bit that I wanted. Filtered it a load of overdrive, delay, reverb. Then this stuff, the steps, some of them are set to happen the first time of every two, some of them are the second, so it's a bit different each time. And this is just parameter locking, like the start and the length and the pan. No, it's not. It's parameter locking the LFO to randomize the pan each time. I've started trying to do this more, like parameter locking the LFO to do stuff, especially if I'm using it just for like randomization, because you can have the LFO do something different on every step. And if you're doing a new step, it's going to cut, you know, each track is monophonic, so it's going to cut off the previous sample anyway. So in a lot of cases, you can just steal the LFO to do something different, depending on what it is that you want to do. Then in this pattern, I did another implementation of the kind of time stretching that you can do. on this. So the way I did that was I've got 2 LFOs set up, both of them set to sample start. One of them is on ramp, one of them is on random. The random one is just set to free play. The ramp one is set to trigger. This step is parameter locked to trigger. So it means that when that step goes off, the starts moving forwards because it's on that ramp LFO. And the random one then just kind of makes it stutter back and forth a bit. And then by changing the speed of this LFO, the one that's on the ramp, let's see what it's on now, 1.68. So if I make that a little bit slower. So you can control how fast or slow the sample goes, and then I can set how much it stutters. So using this, it's not a particularly high quality. You get a lot of clicks and crackles and pops, which is why I've just left this drenched in bit reduction. Oh yeah, you have to have it on loop, the sample mode. But yeah, loads of bit reduction, loads of overdrive, a load of filtering, some delay, some a lot of reverb. It's not going to sound great anyway, so you only want to do it on stuff that you want to be lo-fi. But yeah, that's most of what I did with the sample. So the last thing is, just in case anyone's interested in how I set up the structure, I've got my 8 audio tracks. On this one, I set it up so that I could just basically leave those all unmuted. In fact, so that I could just leave everything unmuted that I was using and just handle it with pattern changes. So I just have my various... Oh my god. Just have my various patterns set up. I'm just going to turn some volumes down. And I'll just change between the patterns on here. Which will normally just automatically happen at the end of the next 4 bars. As I said earlier, I've got some fills set up. So that's how I do the actual structure, is just by moving between the patterns. When I was writing this, I came up with like 2 or 3 patterns that had something interesting in. So like I came up with that cool drum beat and some other stuff. And I then I copy the patterns out and change some of them a bit and just try and knock it into some kind of song structure, because it's all good and well programming something cool. Like operating the device to do something cool is one thing, but then you also have to kind of wrap that in a musical framework if you really want it to pop. It needs to have both. It needs to have good programming and good musicality. The only other thing is like I have, so obviously this has its 8 audio tracks. Track 9 is the Neutron up there. Track 14 is the 2600, track 16 is the Hydrosynth, and I just normally I use track 13 for the 2600, and I honestly can't remember why it's 14 on this one, but what I like to do when I'm writing is just sketch out different ideas. So like the first 4 tracks I'll use for the Neutron and just have a different idea on each track, so I can quickly mute and unmute ideas and see what sounds good. I use 13 and 14 for the 2600 for the same reason, and I use 15 and 16 for the Hydrosynth for the same reason, so I can have a few variations without having to change pattern. I find that a kind of good way of putting these tracks together. Cool, right, okay, I'm gonna go and spend a million years editing this. See you later.